Hey everyone, welcome back to the Product Pivot. I'm Santi and I've got my amazing co-host Meagan with me. So to do a little bit of an intro about what this podcast is, we interview different folks in the product management space about their stories of how they got into product and insights and honest conversations from those journeys. So today we're so excited to have Graham with us. I'm going to flip it over to him and he can give an introduction.
Thanks, Santi. Thanks, Meagan. My name is Graham Reed. I'm Product Ops, Head of Product Operations at a company called Helios. You may know us as Zip Health. You may know us as MedExpress, depending if you're in the UK, US, wherever we are. I've been doing product operations for about 5 years. And then prior to that, did product management for about a decade before that as well. So super excited to be here and talk all things product ops.
I love that. And I know Santi just got into product ops, so it's just a fun, exciting career path. And I think this season is super exciting for us coming in on season 2 because we're interviewing people that are not just product managers, right? So we're trying to break into this other side and see different types of roles that you can experience within the product space. So I'd love to just talk to you a little bit, Graham, if you could share your journey into product operations, like how you fell into it. Is it something that you expected to fall into, or did it just happen?
Yeah, I mean, falling into it was absolutely the correct word, to be honest with you, like most things in my career, actually. So if I go back about 15 years, I fell into product management. I was hired into a role in a business. That role and that project that was shelved, we needed a product manager, and I was like, hey, look, that sounds really cool. I'd love to do that. And so kind of went from there. And, you know, fast forward 10 years doing that in a kind of a head of and a director of type role. And then about 5 years ago, I was working for a language learning company. And had some very interesting ideas about how to do product management. I was the head of products there, and there was a need to kind of really improve the craft of product management rather than the products that we were building and maintaining. And so I created and took away some of my team, and we formed a team, and we were like, well, you know, is this, you know, it kind of feels a bit DevOpsy. Is it product opsy? Yeah, okay, product ops seems to kind of make a bit of sense. Only then looked online and went, oh, there is a thing called product ops. Oh, and that is actually the thing as well. And was like, that's really cool. And kind of, you know, went from there and went from strength to strength, you know, in that business, other businesses since then as well. And in each of those cases, just formed a product ops function from absolute scratch each time, with product ops still growing, much less in its infancy than it was, you know, 3-4 years ago, but certainly now, you know, much more established. But still, businesses are still getting off the ground with it as well. And so, you know, the businesses that I've worked in have always been kind of from this very 0 to 1 space.
And I remember when we did our introduction call, one of the things that we had talked about is like, when's the right time to bring in product operations? And I just kind of, because you're speaking about that a little bit right now, I'm curious if you could touch on that just even slightly. You don't have to go like full in depth, because I'm sure you can talk about that for ages.
It's one of, firstly, the most common questions that comes up in the product ops space, but also one of the most difficult ones, I think, to answer. I have my trends. I have where I think it typically starts, but like all things in product management, it always depends. It very much depends on the business. It can depend on the history of the business, the sector even. So I can tell you what I've experienced. I tend to find businesses will start to look at product ops. If you're looking at numbers, around the 150 mark is where companies start to go, is this something that we should be looking at? Now, that's what I've experienced, and it is also kind of a really, really rough number. It could be 200, it could be 300, it could be 500 before businesses start to kind of go, we're starting to notice our product teams, and by product teams, I do mean kind of product design, engineering, that whole kind of tech side of the business. Are we starting to work a bit differently? Are there gaps appearing in terms of how we're working? Are there gaps appearing between the tech side of the business and the commercial side of the business? Certainly an area that I've experienced a huge amount and put a huge amount of effort in as well. And And it is that gap. It is when you start to notice that things are being done differently, or things are not being covered or covered as much as they were before. The reason I use the kind of the 150-ish type mark, or more accurately, when a business goes from kind of that very early startup into scale up mode, when you start to hire in more product managers into the role, into the business, you then start to see a real difference, because what you have are those founding product managers that are very scrappy. Typically they are do everything, and they really enjoy that, and it's a fantastic place to be in. I've been there myself. And then we bring in more product managers that have come from maybe more established businesses, scale-ups, corporates, where they're used to doing things in either a more standardized way or just different. And what you've then got is the one end of the scale, the scrappiness, and the other end of the scale, much more order, trying to coexist together. And that's where those difficulties, that's where those gaps start to appear. People want to be doing things in a very, very different way. And actually that desire to move on either side of that, to kind of be more scrappy or to be less scrappy, is often quite a difficult thing sometimes for people to want to move on. And so again, there's some effort that's needed there to kind of help align all of those teams. And as soon as you start as a product leader or a business leader, you start to notice these things. That's when product ops really can start to help you.
That's interesting. Santi, do you relate to that at all? Because I know you come from the scrappy, and now you're at that kind of more established space. And I'm curious, do you relate to being the scrappy and not the scrappy?
Yeah, I can definitely relate. And I can see, even in myself, some of the challenges that would come in a team like that, right? So you come from this really scrappy mindset of in a way too, PMs that are in those environments are already doing prod ops, but part of the challenge is just formalizing that. That in itself can be a bit of a challenge to have to overcome. It's a good challenge to have, but just formalizing that need for the prod ops, that need to, get those functions that we were kind of doing ad hoc, and there was really no one person owning it. It was a collective thing. That's been a really cool thing. That for me, my product team currently, we're a little leaner, so it's not as difficult to kind of implement some of these things, which is really great. That said, though, there's still those kind of, I guess it's more or less some of those things where it's we kind of know where we're going with this, but we need to have it kind of down pat. And that's where I've been focusing. We had a lot of good things already in the cooker. It was just really focusing on bringing those into a formalized, I guess, standard way of doing things. And that was actually a huge win for our team, was just getting some of those things that were kind of already getting done and just bringing them right to the surface as here it is, just repeat it. So yeah, I have many, many thoughts, and everything you're saying, Graham, I'm just signing it all in, this is great. One of the questions I did have, though, as you were speaking, and I might derail us a little bit here, but I wanted to know kind of, because you said you were bringing up a lot of product ops teams right from scratch. So what I've heard different opinions about this, just only a couple, but a few different ones. What is your thoughts on if it's a single person bringing up a prod ops team versus you might already have a team that you can work with and have a few more bodies in that role? How have you managed that or seen that in the prod ops space? Because like I said, I've heard some folks if it's only one person doing it, it's going to be really, really hard because of XYZ. Whereas I'm over here, I'm currently the only person doing it. And I'm I can see those points, but I can also see some wins, some things that are actually beneficial for me as the only person doing it. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
It's a great question. I think again, it depends on the business. I think that what is very common, absolutely, is to at least be starting with that team of one. I'm a team of one right now. We're a business of just coming up to 1,000 right now, and at the moment, actually, it's working. I can absolutely see where there's a need for more of me, by the end of the year into next year, and I'm already making a play for that. But do you know what? It's managing quite well at the moment. Now, for the individual, it is absolutely critical to be able to kind of have that mentality to switch between the strategy and the tactical, to be able to kind of be really down in the weeds, and you'll be, as I was this morning, I was deep into permissions of Jira projects and things like that, and trying to figure out how they all work. And then later on, I'm up in look at the strategy of saying, hey, how are we going to be looking at our Q3 planning. We've just finished Q2 planning. So actually, what do we need to do at different stages leading up to that point? So there's a lot of context switching in that, and that doesn't fit well for everybody, and that's absolutely fine. Conversely, when you then have a team, my experience has absolutely been to not look necessarily at saying, well, actually, let's just have lots of product ops managers that are the kind of jack of all trades. They're all doing a bit of everything. It works for some people. It works for some businesses. My personal feeling, and I've spoken to a lot of product ops leaders that have kind of done the same, is looking at those specialisms. So within product ops, there are key areas that can use specialism. Data is a great example. If you've got a really, really gifted data person, an ex-data scientist or analyst or whoever, having them on squad, perhaps with less product or no product ops experience, but somebody that is a dedicated, and I hate the term, so forgive me, but a dedicated resource that is focused on your dashboard, your data, your cleansing, everything else like that, then that's a really good way to approach things. Similarly, if you've got somebody that's really great with product discovery, working with external customers, collating all that information, somebody that maybe is an ex-research analyst, somebody like that, again, then you start to split down the overall function of product ops into kind of its constituent pillars, and you have dedicated and specialist resources towards those. As a team of one, we have to cover all of those bases, and we do the best we can with that.
Absolutely. First of all, love that answer so much. And there are so many things I want to unpack there, but I'm going to cool it. Make sure we get the key things out. So you touched on a couple of things, though, that I think would be really good for our listeners just to hear. So the first one was kind of that skills piece. Current PMs, folks like myself, where we kind of do have this just natural niche for operations, we might be wondering, and folks like me might be wondering, what skills do I need to be good in prod ops? And you listed a couple, or just in terms of experiences, but I'm also curious what other skills someone might need to kind of thrive in this role. And my second question, and we can answer this later, but would be what your ideal prod ops squad would look like. Who are those key people? What are they doing? Those are the two questions that kind of stood out to me as follow-ups, but I'll let you answer however you'd like, but didn't want to bombard you, but those are on my mind.
Sure. I think for me, there's two parts to that answer as well. I think is, what are the skills, and also then what does a career path or career trajectory look like into product ops? And actually, I'll tackle that second piece first, because I think that's a good starting point. Look, yes, absolutely, having product management experience helps. It's certainly an advantage, but it's by no means, a prerequisite for product ops at all. You don't have to have been a product manager, but it helps. But it only helps insofar as you understand, probably inside out, what product managers actually do, because they are the people we tend to support more than anybody else. But you also have a good idea about how those peripheral roles are also supported as well, in terms of design, in terms of product marketing, engineering, absolutely. What are the interactions between product management and all of those other teams? And the interaction with the other key parts of the business as well. Sales, marketing, leadership, support, delivery. What are those touch points? And because you've done it, you understand what those touch points are and also where the gaps tend to appear. But absolutely, project management is absolutely got a huge amount of overlapping skills, a huge amount of that very logical thinking, that very organized nature. And this starts now to bleed over into kind of, some of those skills that I look for. Some of it's not only very pragmatic, but I also feel somebody that has a robustness about them, has a mature head on them. Not in terms of age, not even in terms of necessarily experience, but somebody from a personality perspective that, look, you have to be quite strong in this role. You're asking people to fundamentally change the way they work, build new habits, change old habits. Change management is one of the most difficult things to do in business, in life. And a big part of your role is to get people to be working differently, more efficiently. And that is a very hard thing to do because you're talking about behaviours and personality. And so it does need somebody that is, prepared to go into a room and say, hey, look, this is what we're doing. And look, these are all the reasons behind it. These are all the positive things. I hear you're not liking this, but I'm sorry. This, there is there is an amount of carrot and stick behind this as a change, and we need to work together on this. So in terms of kind of what I would look for, in terms of a person for this particular role, is really very soft skills related. If I'm going out to hiring, I'll be honest with you, I'm not so much looking at their background in terms of their career. I'm much more looking at who they are in terms of a personality. What are their communication skills like? Not just talking and back and forth, but, really deeply listening, teasing out the answers, understanding, like good product managers do as well, really getting to the bottom of what's the problem we're trying to solve here. Someone that's then very empathetic about the situation that they are in, that we are in as a business, and how can we then change that in a way that is also empathetic to the workloads of everybody else as well. We're not coming in and we're going, right, that's it, we're going to do this, and this, and it's all going to be done next week, and I don't care what your workloads are, we're going to get on and do it. No. We need to think in a very empathetic way. We need to think in a very strategic way about not only how are we getting from A to B to C and what the business value of that is, but how do we do that in a way that doesn't absolutely shaft and disrupt those teams along the way as well. So absolutely somebody that, has got that empathy, is very pragmatic as well. And, all of these things that I'm saying as well, he's not looking at, again, your skills, the qualifications you've got, years of experience. I'm very much looking at you as a person and how you would fit into doing product ops on a daily basis.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's very similar to a PM role, right? You have to get along with people. It's very similar.
Absolutely. Product managers are, they're a unique role like every role is, but I think more unique than people give them credit for. A phrase that a friend of mine, Bex Yelland, a very good friend of mine, she doesn't like me saying this, but a phrase that I quite often come up with for product managers is they're a role that when all hits the fan, there is nothing that they can do to solve a problem, but they're the ones that everybody is coming to and blaming. And it's such a difficult role to do from that perspective. I realise it comes across, I'm looking at it very negative with that, but it's the truth. Because product managers are there to orchestrate everybody else, those people that are actually doing the work, the engineers, the designers, the salespeople, the marketers. They are there to orchestrate all of them. They don't physically do any of that at all. And so that becomes such a more difficult role to do on a day-to-day basis, because actually you are then also relying on good relationships, good communications, and good personalities in other people. It's exactly the same in product operations as well. We are helping people to work differently, work better, work smarter, but they're the ones that have got to go and do it. And so actually, if they just choose not to, there's not a great deal we can do about it, at the absolute bottom line. And so it's absolutely about how do we influence and how do we promote good working patterns and behaviour as well. And that is why both roles are can be very, very challenging.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think one thing that I was curious about, it kind of takes us back a little bit in the conversation, but I think it's really relevant to what we were talking about early, is how to make this very career focused. And one thing that comes to mind is, say the company doesn't have a product ops function and you're currently working in that org. I think one thing that our listeners have found, and the people that we've interviewed from a PM perspective have found, is that a lot of people find their PM roles from just finding a problem within their current org, and that's how they pivot into that type of role. So I'm curious, what can someone do that might be interested in a product ops career path to solve those problems and potentially find that sort of career path within an org that doesn't have that right now?
So actually, it's a great question, and it's actually quite a deep part to kind of look into, because every business actually has product ops as a function. not as a role, but as a function. So when we look at product ops, what actually does it focus on? It's ways of working fundamentally. It's how do people operate day to day, the processes that we go through. It's about those habits that people have built up for those processes so they become very natural, very efficient. It's about the use of data and using that very, very instinctively as within your teams. It's about how do you collaborate with your teams, your squads, with the wider business. How do we use the tools that, Jira and Asana and whatever else we've got? How do we use all of those tools, and how ultimately do we use them efficiently? We're doing all of this day by day. We're getting by. We always have done. Without product ops, and more basic than that, without those internal operations, business just doesn't function. Without a step-by-step way of working, even in its most rudimentary sense, a business doesn't function. So all these things are already here. Most businesses, if not all, are using data as an example in some way, shape, or form. Do they have somebody dedicated looking at it? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe from an insights kind of team perspective, yes. But actually, are we then making sure those teams are using it on a daily basis, weekly basis, analysing, taking the insights from it? Maybe, maybe not. Frequently, this is something that as a role or a portion of a role is taken on by product leaders. So CPOs, CTOs, directors of product, heads of product. It's on their shoulders to make sure all of these things are happening, but they're never given any focus because fundamentally it's not directly revenue driving. And that's a whole other conversation we could dive into maybe another time. Again, my good friend Antonia, who runs my podcast with me, we have very interesting debates about actually how does product ops drive revenue. Again, indirectly, yes, it does. Directly, it's more difficult to kind of actually pin down. And so as a result of that, product leaders, it's just not their focus. And so that's when a role suddenly becomes quite important. Whether that's a full-time role or whether it's a part of a role of somebody, maybe a product manager, that can go, do you know what, I'm going to spend one day of my week per week focusing on product ops type things. So actually looking at the way we document, looking at the meetings that we have, and unpicking whether we need all of those anymore. Our data dashboards, looking at our communications processes, all of those bits and pieces. It's not as important to have a role, but it is vital that when we're talking about product ops, that we do dedicate time and focus on product ops, because what happens right now is it just sits on the side of usually a product leader's desk, and it will get to it if we ever get to it. And that's where the problem really lies. Product ops is something that shouldn't be needed fundamentally, but it absolutely is in the modern workplace. And that's why it needs that dedicated focus to get it right, so that those people can take a step back, look at it very holistically and say, I can see a connection there and there and there that I would not have seen if I'd not spent the time looking at this. So for people that are watching this and people that are looking, saying, actually, is there a role within the business, even in part, formally in product ops? That's the thing to look at, is to kind of go, well, what's not being addressed right now from an operational, from a process perspective? Where are there deficiencies? And why isn't somebody basically focused on it? Why isn't somebody looking at this already? And if they're not, then maybe you can.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And
and Santi, I was just about to say that, I imagine you could resonate because there was a gap in your business, and that's why someone decided to pick you to focus on it. And so, I'm sure you can speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny too, because I joined the business as a PM. We did have a product ops person at the time, and then they had moved on to a new opportunity. And so that role was vacant for about 7 months or so, I think. And again, looking back, because I reflect a lot, I noticed that I was doing product ops things throughout my whole PM tenure up to that point. Just, again, wasn't formal, but I was still thinking of tooling and how we're using it. And I helped lead the rollout of our new customer feedback tool that we're using now. I've, helped streamline some processes within the team. I was doing bits and pieces of product ops. And then thank goodness for my manager, who was like, you'd be really good at this full time. So he came to me and was like, yeah, we see that you have the PM side. That's great, but you're really able to drive some of this product stuff home. And he kind of opened that role back up, and I was able to move into it. But similar to how some people get into product management by finding problems and doing product management work in some way, shape, or form in their day to day, that's how I would say people can also get into product operations, as they see these little things that could be improved, like you said, Graham, whether it's like a process that's not being followed through completely, or there's a gap in it, even if it's just something simple like, hey, I streamlined all of our documentation into this hub. There are ways that people can start doing the product stuff without having a formal title. And then if they are digging it, they're like, yeah, this is great. I'm in my zone. I want to do this full time. They've already paved some of the way for themselves to be like, here's how I've already implemented products benefits into our company. And then they can have that discussion. So again, back to the topic we talked about with another guest, it was very much like the person, does some of the work, advocates that they're interested in this. That's also a really big part of it, but also having that manager help kind of pave that way, crucial, right? And I think that's a really great way that managers and employees can have that really deep bond in career development, and just people get their hands dirty in the stuff they want to do. I was fortunate enough to have that, and I'm loving it a lot. And forgive me if we touched on this a little bit early in the conversation, but I did want to bring it back to this point because, Graham, when we met you for our introduction, you said product feels more like home. And it really resonates with you in that way. And I just wanted to maybe hear more of your thoughts on that, and like how that actually feels and what that relates to for you in the role.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes hard to kind of describe why it just feels so natural to me. I think because it is such a people role. I always say it's so much more about people and your interactions with people, helping people change their habits, their ways of working. It's much more than just processes. It's much more than strategy. It's much more than tools, anything else like that. And so because it is about kind of your interactions with people, it has to be something that really does resonate with you on a very personal level. And I think for me, it's about kind of traits that I have very naturally. I'm a logical person. I'm a very strategic kind of thinking individual. I'm a problem solver. At home, I'm always problem solving, DIY, just fixing things, blah 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 blah. And that is just kind of how I work and how I operate. And that's not to say that has to be the same for everybody. Of course not. But for me, I really, really do enjoy the problem solving aspect of it. I think in part because no 2 days are the same. It's not just about the strategy and the roadmap that we build for ourselves and the things that we're going to change, but then people will come to you and go, Graham, I've got this. How do we do this? Or how could we implement that? And I'm like, I don't know. But let's have a look. Let's have a think. Give me some time to go away and write on my whiteboard behind me. Let me draw this stuff out. I'll give you an example. We recently introduced like a shared calendar for important meetings and tasks among the product team. It's not gone down amazingly well. It just hasn't worked out right, as a first iteration. And so like this morning, I was like, how could we change this and improve this? And I'm trying to think of I've still not solved it, by the way, but I'm trying to think of new ways that we can approach this idea of helping remind the teams of what they're doing without being too intrusive. And that is fantastic for me to have that space and that time to kind of go, how do I solve this when I've not solved it before? We've not solved it before. Nobody solved it properly in the way that we want to do this. And I think that's what's really, important for me. And I think as well, being able to help others, it's always been important to me from forever, to help them be better, to help and then see that actually change almost in real time. The changes that you make. And it's very similar to product management in that way. One of the things that we love about being product managers is we get to see the fruits of our labor. We get to see what we built in the hands of users or colleagues, and them actually making a difference in their lives as a result of that. And this is exactly the same thing. The changes, the improvements that we make, seeing how that changes in a fairly short order as well. To see, I started at Helios back in October, and feedback that I had only last night was to say, look, Graham, so much has changed in that time. I look back to where we were in 2024, now where we are now, it's just so much more ordered. There's more structure in terms of what we're doing. Everybody knows what is expected of them. And by knowing that, they can work within those bounds to extend themselves to be as good as they possibly can be. And they didn't have that before. And that, it's feedback like that that absolutely, for me, is why I do this job.
Yeah, there is that element. And I think that's part of why I also really resonate with this role. I like to joke, like, I'm dual-sided, I'm PM and prod ops, but I really do resonate with this role because there is such that element of helping others. And I am huge on that, whether it's professionally, outside of work, life in general. I love helping people, and I love helping them be better at what they're doing or get to where they got to go, and help them however I can. And that's a huge element to prod ops. Is yes, the change management can be really hard to manage, but ultimately if someone has that drive of genuinely wanting to help the person, the team, whoever out, and they want to do it so that they are winning in a way that, like, whatever the win is for them, what that means, that's a huge part of this role, in my opinion. And I think it's one of the reasons why us in prod ops now keep running with it and keep doing the good work of prod ops, and why other people might want to pivot into prod ops, and they might see that, there's ways that I can kind of help those around me even more. And one of the ways might be in the prod ops function. So I resonate a lot with that. And that was just something I picked out from what you said. And I was like, that's a good note.
I think one of the things that all quite often gets overlooked as well, heavily overlooked, is we spend a lot of our time in product ops really helping kind of the teams around us, because true product ops is quite a strategic role. It's a role that sits typically at a head of, director of type level in the hierarchy of the business. Not always, but usually. And as a result of that, it does also give one the opportunity to also be very supportive to that product leadership as well. And I find that gets so overlooked in conversation, in delivery of product operations, because actually, what are we doing in product ops? We are helping people to be more efficient so that they can spend more of their time on what I like to call their primary function within the role. Engineers, their primary function, very stereotypical, is write lines of code. Fundamentally, that is the bottom line. Product managers design, build great products, dictate what the products are going to do. Salespeople fundamentally go and sell. Product ops is there to help them spend as much time as possible on doing that primary role. And if we look at our leaders, product leaders, their primary role in the business, the thing that they get hired in for and get paid the big bucks for, is dealing with the board, dealing with the C-suite, evangelizing the product, evangelizing the team, the strategy, and robustly building and defending at times that strategy. And look, that's a full-time job in itself. So actually, product ops is also there to support product leadership in making sure they can spend as much time as possible on that role as well. And the result of that is the team is better equipped, the team is better defended, the team is better evangelized, the products and the roadmap exactly the same. And that has a material impact on the teams as well. When product leadership can be doing their job with the wider business as great as possible, then the product team also has more time and more faith, more trust in it, a better image to be doing their job as well. And so there's a knock-on effect from that as well. And again, it's a lovely thing to just unlocking people to do those primary roles, again, for either leadership or on the ground.
Yeah, really good call out that it goes.
That's a really good point, actually. It's a really, really good point. I think the biggest thing I've taken away from this conversation from start to even now, like this whole time we've been talking, is time. It just seems like the biggest thing that prod ops unlocks is just giving back people time, because they allow the other roles to focus on those roles while prod ops focus on making people more efficient.
Absolutely. It's time. Again, my friend Antonia, she likes to use focus. Again, one and the same ultimately, to give more people the time, the focus on the things that actually are driving revenue. And it is absolutely true. If you strip it all back, what we're trying to do is to say, hey, how can I be making you spend less time on that A, B, C, D, E step process. Ergo, so you can have more time or focus on the stuff that we want to be getting out the door. Absolutely, without question.
That's huge. Like that, like you said, can be the driver of revenue. And so that can be make or break things for a startup or for someone trying to raise a funding round. That can be huge. So I think a role like that is incredibly important. The only thing I feel like we haven't really looked at or talked through here is trying to build credibility in the space of product ops. So if you're someone in CS or someone in a PM wanting to potentially pivot into product ops, is there a way someone that's exploring this role could potentially build credibility before breaking into the role? I know we talked a little bit about that, but maybe is there anything else that you have to recommend?
I think certainly within your own business, whether it's an internal transfer or you're looking to build your own credibility and skills and experience to then go on to a role. I think it's absolutely about looking at what you can do to improve the way that your team is working. And that's not reserved for just product managers at all. You can do that in any space, like say CS, in marketing, in supporting delivery teams. If you can take that opportunity to say, okay, look, how could we improve our ways of working? How can we improve the way that we document? How could we improve our use of data? That is experience that actually absolutely is transferable because it's all the same stuff ultimately. Yes, you'll have a different nuance and a different focus, but it's all the same concepts, which is why there are ops roles popping up in different parts of the business, in sales, in finance, in design, engineers been there for a long time. So these types of roles are now becoming so much more popular and fundamentally all have the same sort of focus. So absolutely look at what opportunities you can take to do that within where you are at the moment, your own divisions. I think when then you're looking outside of that, I think is be part of the community is a big thing here as well. There is a very good, a very strong, and a very, I suppose, compassionate, a very empathetic, but a very community-like community when it comes to product operations. Product ops is a role that has not been defined by a book, even though there is a very good book, I will say. Denise and Melissa's book is very, very good. I agree with about 95% of it. The other 5% is interpretation there. But it's very good. It's very strategic. So it is very aimed at people that are looking to say a leadership level, we want to dive into product ops, we want to have some of this. But there isn't a book. There isn't like that. There are millions of product management books to say, hey, this is how you do it. There might be one day, but there isn't at the moment. So it's been very community driven, and it has been driven to a point whereby the role has now settled into this is what it is and what it's not. And we're all very passionate about kind of defending it in that way. And so there is a great community idea of sharing and upskilling people. So be part of these communities. There are online communities, Slack communities on LinkedIn. There are meetups. I'm just about to create a UK meetup group in the next kind of week or so for product ops very specifically, so that actually we can just continue to share. We can upskill people just by doing this. And the other thing with that as well is because there is no manual, there is no book, and it is very bespoke to every business. Product ops, Santi, I'm sure as you found as well, you go in and you'll find and you go, okay, this is how we have to do it here, which is not necessarily the same as maybe I would have done it elsewhere. And that's absolutely great and fine. Because of that, we're all learning all of the time. There are some fantastic people that I absolutely look up to, people in the States, people in the UK and in Europe that are just doing things that are just different, and they're experimenting with things that I'm like, I've never tried that before. I've never thought of it that way before. Fantastic. I can go and learn, and they'll learn from me. And we are all learning these things together. We're trying. So be part of that community because we are an incredibly friendly bunch. We are there. We are almost very anti some of the product management movement whereby, well, you've got to do it this way, otherwise you're doing it wrong. No. None of us have got this worked out. We don't know if we're doing it right or wrong at the best of times. So come and join that party and be part of that community. And that is absolutely the best way that you'll learn. And as well, you'll network. You'll get to then start to know where those roles are, where those opportunities are, maybe opportunities with some of those people that are in role as well.
Are the communities that you're speaking about welcoming to people that are not currently in those roles, but
Yes,
want to be.
absolutely, because we all started, and majority of them, all when these communities started to form, most of them weren't in product ops at that point anyway. So we are absolutely welcoming. If you have a real desire to want to come and be a part of product ops, come and talk to us. I must have 3 or 4 conversations a week with people that are going, Graham, hey, look, really interesting in product ops. I've done product management typically years before. What tips have you got to getting into this? And
That's great.
right now, a big part of that is all about kind of where are the roles. Hiring is still incredibly difficult worldwide, as we know. But at the other side of it as well is, look, what skills are people looking for? How do we get into it? What resources can we look up and read and things like that? And every single person I'm speaking to is so dedicated, so self-sufficient, I suppose, in kind of learning all of this sort of stuff. I'm like, hey, look, there are loads of resources out there you can go and find, but also go and talk to people. Just listen into the conversations that are happening. Come and join the 2, 3, 4 Slack communities that are quite prominent right now, and just be part of the conversation, because you will absolutely pick up what's going on. And the thing with a lot of what we do is, it's not rocket science what we do. It's quite often so simple solutions, so simple ideas, that we're putting them in place because nobody's had the time to go and put these things in place, not because it was difficult to figure out. And so it's not rocket science to do this job at all. It's something that really does come with a lot of personality behind it.
Yeah. It feels, from your description, kind of the opposite of product management, which is really gate kept.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
I would say it absolutely is. About 2 years ago, no, 3, no, blimey, how long ago was this now? At least 3 years ago now. I don't know, it might even been longer than that now. I pulled together about 30 of the world's kind of leading product ops people at the time on 2 different Skype calls, and said, look, have we got to be careful of a fundamental problem? We have a role that is not being guided by anybody, but if we're not careful, we will end up being guided by somebody, because they write a book, that they are a company like Google or somebody like that just goes, here is what product is, and you will follow this. And that's exactly what happened with product management. It's people and companies went, we do it this way, look up to us, and if you don't do it this way, you're doing it wrong. And we absolutely universally agreed we need to not allow that to happen with product operations. Yes, product operations has settled naturally on, these are the sorts of things that it is, and these are the things that it isn't. And that was universally agreed. If some businesses want to just tap into the things that it's not a little bit because it works for them, fine. It's not for us to say. We individually will know if that's not for us, but that's fine. But as a result of that, it makes us very, very welcoming to new ideas all of the time. And because we know the role is so fluid, so varied, so open, that we have to entertain all of these new ideas, and we just do. So it is absolutely the opposite to product management in that way, and we want to keep it that way.
That's good. I think it's good just to echo. I'm glad that you went through all of that, because I feel like if somebody has gone through the process of trying to get themselves into a product management community and they have been met with that wall or that feeling of unwelcoming feeling, then I feel like it could deter them from trying to explore this product ops community or trying to meet others in the product ops space, because they hear product and they're like, oh, they're all like that. So it's good that I think you went through that and explained all of that, because it's unfortunate that product management is so gate kept, but it doesn't need to be. And I think that there's enough roles for us to go around. If you have the grit and you have the excitement to have that role, it doesn't need to be like reserved for those that want to follow the book. That's how I feel.
Yes. I'm glad that you said that, because that's one of the things that I've always said to like folks that come to me if I do like an ad hoc mentorship or something. I'll share with them like, yeah, there's some fundamental best practices in every role, right? Like there's some things that are pretty, like you said, Graham, like standard. This is kind of what it is. This is what kind of isn't. But it doesn't mean it's always going to work in the context in which you are in. I always preface by saying it's not cookie cutter. Product management is not cookie cutter. Prod ops, again, I'm just newer into the field myself, but I can already tell it's not going to be cookie cutter, like you said, because there's going to be different context and nuances and things that happen. But the fact that we're open to that, we realize that, and we take what serves us and maybe put on the back burner what doesn't serve us as well, and just continue to iterate like product, that's huge. That's huge, in my opinion. It's something I've practiced in my product career. It's something I'm practicing as a product manager. I'm not sticking to one, we have to do it this way. It's very much like, let's see, let's look around, see what kind of good looks like elsewhere, but let's see if it helps us, and if it doesn't, just move along, iterate, try again. That's all we do in life in general. We try things, we iterate, we keep going.
So true.
Couldn't agree more. And I think just to finalize on that point very briefly is we have got into a world, unfortunately, within product management whereby we end up looking up to certain individuals, whether they've written a book or they've got a course and things like that. And unfortunately, some of those are very much, well, you will do it this way, otherwise you can't call yourself a product manager. You will do these 30 things every day without fail, otherwise you're not a product manager. And that's hard enough for most experienced people. The thing that I have a big problem with and a fear of with people like that is it makes the barrier to entry so difficult. It really does put people off into the role. And so that's also why it's so important to just absolutely reiterate to all viewers, product ops is different everywhere. You will absolutely almost be starting from scratch every single time in terms of your knowledge, because you're learning about the business and you need to approach it differently every time. There is very little in terms of barriers to entry in that respect. Do not be looking at what people have done and experienced people, even though, I do a lot of writing about product ops, and every single time I'm trying to make sure, here is what I have done, this is what I do. But that's just what I do. That's just the way I have approached a situation. It does not mean that is the way to do X, Y, and Z. So if you are looking at product ops, there is no right way of doing this at all. And don't be fooled by anybody that tells you there is.
I love that. Good into that discussion. I know that we're coming up on time. So is there anything that we haven't covered on this episode that you want to make sure that we cover? Because I know that we had our questions, but still we want to give you time to cover anything else.
No, I think just to kind of, as I say, reiterate that product ops is super accessible, but it is so community driven. So you're absolutely the best way to get started is to seek out people that are doing it already. Incredibly friendly bunch. If you see somebody that's doing it or you recognize a name that's doing it, reach out to them. Almost certainly they will be happy to have a chat to you to help you want to get into the role, or some pointers, etc., or point you towards resources that are kind of been written about this. So just do seek these people out, and absolutely more the merrier. It's such a growing role right now across businesses in the US. Yes, UK has taken a little while to get it to find its feet with product ops, but it's growing now. Europe has quite embraced it quite nicely, particularly in places like Germany, Holland, really taking it kind of to their hearts a little bit. So the role is growing. The roles are appearing out there, and just reach out to people and learn as much as you can.
I have just our final question that we want to ask you. So we had one question at the end of our season for season 1. And so we have to switch it up this season. So it's going to be kind of random. So I wanted to ask you, what's one product metric that we should stop pretending to care about?
Wow. Okay. She is not holding anything back.
I think I'm probably going to go with quite an easy answer, and I think velocity. I think the velocity of teams, maybe not quite so much a product metric, but a product division metric. Velocity is just something that seems to be a metric that just gets picked up and used to batter people over the head with, without fully understanding exactly how to use it. I've had this in businesses before whereby they've been so obsessed about kind of the velocity of teams, down to kind of the point, to the hour, to the minute. And I'm just like, why? What are you doing? Let's focus on the good that we've put out the door, rather than trying to kind of eke every single possible second out of people. And particularly where it's tried to be used across teams, where they are wildly different in terms of their focus, the complexity, the size of the teams. It's just crazy. So yeah, just ditch velocity.
It's a buzzword, right? It's like one of those ones that founders pick up and they're like, increase velocity.
Because they don't understand. They don't necessarily understand what it means. They think, velocity. We'll go faster. We'll deliver more. Well, no, because actually the way that you're calculating it doesn't lend itself to that. So yeah, just ditch it.
I love that answer. It's a good answer. You're the first person we've asked that, so I was really curious what you're going to say. Well, this has been so much fun. Santi, anything that you want to part on? I feel like I've been talking.
Oh, no, this was great. This is one of those episodes, again, where I was very much engaged in listening. This was very beneficial for me. And I know it's going to be very beneficial for our listeners, product people, whoever's curious about it. Thank you again just for all these incredible insights. And we'll definitely be leaning on you for the future product ops discussions as well.
Well, very welcome. Absolutely love the conversation. Thank you.